You're watching This Week in Fish and Wildlife, sponsored by Bozeman-based Simms Fishing Products, the industry leader in fishing apparel.
Thursday morning, time once again for This Week in Fish and Wildlife. Joining us on the road this morning, Morgan Jacobson. Morgan, quite an interesting few days for Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, specifically in relationship to the incident over on the Hebgen Dam and immediately downstream from that. Where do we stand with that now? Just kind of recap what happened and where we are right now, if you can.
Sure, Chet. So, last Tuesday, I believe it was the 30th, was when Hebgen Dam malfunctioned. We saw a significant drop in flows in the Madison River. They got down to just over 200 cubic feet per second. Down from, north of 600 cubic feet per second. So it was a significant drop. So we saw flows, especially between Hebgen Dam and Quake Lake, were down. Parts of the river, were down. There was still a main channel, but there were isolated pools and side channels that had fish in them. The day after that happened, we saw lots of volunteers come together and help move those fish that were stranded in those isolated pools back into the main channel. There was a fishing closure that extended from Hebgen Dam down to Ennis Lake. And that was in effect until flows were restored later that week. So where we stand now, flows are back up to normal. Hebgen Dam is repaired. That fishing closure has been lifted, and things are, knock on wood, back to somewhat normal right now.
I know that some of this involved spawning beds and some things like that. Hard to tell what the impact, I would think, is going to be for a while in that.
It is, that's right, Chet. One of our main concerns in this process were trout redds, and redds are where trout lay their eggs until they hatch, and so that was a concern because when water levels came down, there was potential for those redds to become exposed to cold temperatures, and if redds freeze, then they're not viable anymore. And so that was one of our concerns. Some of the things that we saw while volunteers were out, working on the river and helping. Salvage those stranded fish. There were still a lot of redds that were underwater, which is a really good thing. There were certainly places where there was very little water, but overall, I think we were encouraged by what we saw. Knowing that things could have been much worse. And so, like you said, the impact to those redds is unclear, and it will be for some time. In fact, it'll take at least a year before we can measure recruitment into the population from this generation of trout redds. So the impacts to the fishery at least are yet to be seen, but that'll be something we're looking at going into the future.
Talk to me, if you can, just a little bit about that amazing response and volunteer effort from around Southwest Montana to help whatever could be done on that. Pretty impressive.
Chet, it was a tremendous response that we saw from volunteers from all over, the community of Ennis, as well as, people even from out of state came to help in any way that they could. And so, it really demonstrated, just the passion that people have and the commitment they have to the resource out there. And it was really encouraging to see. And so, we saw a great response then, and people continue to ask if there's anything they can do. Right now, I think the best thing people can do is to reduce stress for fish as much as they can. So that may have implications for where you decide to fish, as well as how you handle fish when you catch them. So it is legal to fish now in that stretch of the river, but be mindful of that. Be mindful that there are still redds in the water, and every little bit helps in terms of what you can what you decide to do to help the fishery.
Story that's been ongoing here in Southwest Montana. One we'll continue to check in with you from time to time, see how things progress, Morgan.
Yeah, we'll be watching it closely here for the next year and beyond.
All right, Morgan, thank you very much.
You bet.
And that's This Week in Fish and Wildlife.
You've been watching This Week in Fish and Wildlife, sponsored by Bozeman-based Simms Fishing Products, the industry leader in fishing apparel.